Today, our subject is accepted quantities. It is according to the IATA DGL section 2.6. What will be our contents? The topic we will have: what is accepted quantities? Will accepted quantities allow in baggage and posts? DG permitted and not permitted in accepted quantities? EQ codes and DGL table 2.6a. Package quantity limits example. Packing and package tests. Different DG in accepted quantities packed in one outer packaging. Marking of accepted quantities package. Documentation requirements. Handling requirements. The minimis quantities and example. Operator variations. And finally, we will have a summary. First of all, what is accepted quantities? It means a small quantities. Maybe you will have this question: how small it is? The maximum net quantities per package will not exceed 1 kg or 1 liter. These quantities are rather small when comparing with the normal DG quantities, such as 10 liter, 60 liter, or even 220 liter. Of course, the maximum net quantity per package also depends on the EQ code. About the EQ code, later we will elaborate more when we come across the table 2.6a. Because of the small quantities, and therefore DG and accepted quantities are not fully regulated, such as exempt from the UN packaging and labeling requirements of the DGR. However, those stated in DGR 2.6.1 are no exemptions. So, what is DGR 2.6.1? Here is the detail. So the operator and shippers must observe the requirements mentioned in here whenever they handle the DG in accepted quantities. Now we come to the topic about the baggage and post. As we mentioned before, accepted quantity means small quantities. So will such small quantities are allowed in baggage or mail? When you see these two photos, you may get the answer. The answer is negative according to the DGL 2.6.2.1. Now we move to the topic which DG permitted in accepted quantities. Are all classes of DG allowed in accepted quantities? Negative. Only those DG which mentioned in DGL 2.6.2.2 may be permitted to transport as accepted quantities. And the detail of DGL 2.6.2.2 as below. Here is the complete list. Maybe you have this question: will it be troublesome to identify which DG is permitted to be accepted quantities from DGL 2.6.2.2? So there is a more simple way, and that is referred to the DGL table 4.2. If we find those DG with EQ code from E1 to E5 in column F, then they are permitted as accepted quantities. Here is column F. Whenever we deal with the DG in accepted quantities, we always focus in column F to determine the EQ code in here for a particular DG. Maybe you also have this question. Can we identify which DG are not permitted in accepted quantities in table 4.2? The answer is yes. Those with an E0 code or without any code in column F are not permitted. Here is the sample. So in column F here, you can see the EQ code is E0 or the UN number without any EQ code. That means they are not permitted as accepted quantities. Let's use one more example to elaborate about this point. For example, UN 1950, you can see from the column F, the EQ code is E0. It means it's not permitted in accepted quantities. We have come across many EQ codes in column F of table 4.2. So what is the meaning of EQ code in column F? Let us recall the table 4.2. In column F here, you can see many EQ codes ranging from E0 to E5. So what is the meaning of the EQ code? In order to answer this question, then it must refer to table 2.68. Here is the sample of table 2.68. The EQ codes in table 2.68 tell the shipper what is the accepted package quantity limits in inner and outer packaging. Let us use an example to elaborate how to use this table. For example, the EQ code E1. From the table, we can see when the EQ code is E1, each inner packaging, the quantity cannot exceed 30 gram or 30 milliliter, while each outer packaging cannot exceed 1 kg or 1 liter when the EQ code is E1. In the table 2.68, you see there's the two units of measurement. One is gram or kg, the other one is milliliter or liter. So which unit of measurement we should use depends on the DG physical state. If the DG is a solid, then the unit of measurement must be gram or kg. If the physical state of the DG is gaseous or liquid, then the unit of measurement must be milliliter or liter. Now it is time to use an example to elaborate how to use both table 2.6a and table 4.2. Assume a shipper wants to ship the UN 1088 as accepted quantities. He or she may have below questions. Will it be permitted? If yes, what will be the package quantity limits? So first, we need to refer DGR table 4.2 and locate the UN number 1088. And in DGR table 4.2, we find that UN number 1088 has a EQ code E2 in column F, and therefore it means it is permitted to ship as accepted quantities. This is the answer for question 1. Since we know the EQ code is E2 for UN 1088, so our next step we need to refer table 2.68. The code E2 in table 2.6a tells us that the quantity in each inner packaging cannot exceed 30 gram or 30 milliliter, and each outer packaging quantity cannot exceed 500 gram or 500 milliliter. So this is the answer for question 2. So the shipper have the idea whether it is permitted and also the package quantity limit. He also have the answer. So if UN 1088 is shipped as accepted quantities, then each inner packaging of acetal cannot exceed 30 milliliter, while each outer packaging cannot exceed 500 milliliter. After the shipper knows the package quantity limit, next step, he need to know how to pack. As mentioned before, DG in accepted quantities are not fully regulated, and therefore UN packaging is not required. However, packaging used for DG in accepted quantities must consist of inner packaging to contain the DG, cushioning of absorbent materials, for the intermediate packaging, and finally, there must be a strong rigid outer packaging. So this is the essential component to pack the DG in accepted quantities. Besides, according to the DGR 2.6.6, the completed accepted quantity package must also able to pass first the job test and second the staggering test. So the shipper must ensure the completed accepted quantity package able to pass the two tests mentioned in here. If you were the shipper, you may also have this question. Can it be allowed if shipper wants to pack DG in accepted quantities with different EQ codes in the same outer packaging? The answer is yes, according to the DGR 2.6.4.3. However, the shipper must observe the total quantity per outer packaging must be limited to that corresponding to the most restricted EQ code. What does that mean? Let us use an example to elaborate this point. Assume we have two DG items packed together. DG item 1 has an EQ code E1, and the maximum net quantity per outer packaging is 1 kg or 1 liter. DG item 2 has the EQ code E2, and the maximum net quantity per outer packaging is 500 gram or 500 milliliter. So in this case, which EQ code is the most restricted? The most restricted EQ code is E2 if DG item 1 and 2 are packed in one outer packaging. So the outer packaging cannot exceed 500 grams or 500 milliliter. After the shipper knows how to pack the DG in accepted quantities, next step he needs to know any marking is required for the outer packaging. The answer is yes. Package containing DG in accepted quantities must be durably and legibly marked with the mark as on the left according to the DGL 2.6.7.1. Here is the sample of the necessary marks. The dimension of the mark must be at least 100 mm times 100 mm. By the way, what is the meaning of the symbols in here? The single ester is the location to mark the primary hazard class or division of the DG contained in the package. While the double ester is the location to mark the name of the shipper or consignee if it is not shown elsewhere on the package. In other words, if the name of the shipper or consignee already shown in the outer packaging, then this step is not necessary. And here is the sample of field mark. And the field mark must be shown in accepted quantity outer packaging, like the sample in here. After the shipper knows how to pack and what marking is necessary, next step the shipper needs to know is about the documentation handling. Is the shipper declaration for DG required for accepted quantities? The answer is negative, and it is according to the DGL 2.6.8.1. However, the statement DG in accepted quantities and the number of package must be indicated in the airway bill. Example you can find in DGL figure 8.2F. Here's the sample of figure 8.2F. So in here, you can clearly see that in the nature and quantity of goods box, the shipper must input the mandatory statement of DG in accepted quantities and also the number of package. This is the mandatory requirement for the shipper to put this statement in the airway bill whenever he or she ship the DG in accepted quantities. When we talk about the packing, marking, and documentations, they are related to the shipper. Now we come to the topic about handling. It is related to the operators. So, what operators need to observe in accepted quantity handling? Is a checklist required? The answer is negative. Checklist is not required for DG in accepted quantities. It is according to the DGL 2.6.9 Note 1. Then how about the written information to pilot in command in abbreviation loadout? The answer also negative. Loadout is also not required for accepted quantities according to the DGL 2.6.9 Note 2. However, operator needs to observe the loading restriction such as low DG in passenger cabin. In other words, operator cannot put the accepted quantity package in passenger cabin because they are still DG, although the quantity is small. Reporting. The operator needs to report to the competent authority whenever there is any DG accident, incident, and other irregularity related to the DG in accepted quantities. Now we move to the topic, the minimus quantities. When we talk about the accepted quantities, we cannot skip to talk about the minimus quantity because it also needs to refer to the EQ code. So what is the minimus quantities? The quantities permitted in the minimus quantities are much more smaller than the accepted quantities. Maybe you will ask, how smaller than? When DG are assigned to cooks, E1, E2, E4, and E5 are not subject to the regulations. If shipper can compile the inner and outer packaging requirements as below. Here's the summary. So in the minimus quantity, the maximum net quantity per inner packaging cannot exceed 1 milliliter or 1 gram, while the maximum net quantity per outer packaging cannot exceed 100 milliliter or 100 gram. We have two tables in here. One is for the minimus quantities, while the other is for accepted quantities. When you compare with these two tables, you will find that the permitted quantities in the minimus quantities are very small when comparing with the one in accepted quantities. Because of these very small quantities, that's why the minimus quantities are not subject to the regulations. Although the minimus quantities are not subject to the regulations, however, shipper must ensure to comply with the packing requirements mentioned in DJAL 2.6.5, but accept the requirements of intermediate packaging. In other words, the essential component to pack the minimus quantities will include the inner packaging to contain the DG, cushioning or absorbent materials, and finally the outer packaging. And also need to fulfill and compile the job and stacking test mentioned in DJAL 2.6.6. So in other words, the minimus quantity package must able to pass both job and stacking tests. Now let us take an example to elaborate how to apply in the minimus quantities. Again, we use the UN1088 as example. Assume the shipper trained his or mind to ship UN1088 as the minimus quantities. So he or she may also have similar question as below. Will it be permitted? If yes, what will be the package quantity limit? So first, we also need to refer table 4.2 first, and then we locate the UN number 1088 from table 4.2 and find there is a EQ code E2 in column F. So the EQ code for UN1088 is E2. Since the EQ code is E2 and therefore it is permitted to be the minimus quantities, and it is according to the DGL 2.6.10.1. However, the package quantity limit is not referred to the table 2.68, but it is according to the DGL 2.6.10.1.A and D, and they are summarized as below. And we see this table before. So if UN1088 is shifted as the minimus quantities, then each inner packaging of acetal cannot exceed 1 milliliter, while each outer packaging cannot exceed 100 milliliter. Now we move to the final topic, operator variation. Why we have this topic? Because not all carriers accept DG in accepted quantities. Individual carriers has a right to set the rules more strict than IATA DGL, and such strict rule will inform IATA and found in the operator variations. Hong Kong Airline is one of the examples not accept the DG in accepted quantities. And here is the operator variation HX-01 detail. So you can see the detail in here, and Hong Kong Airline clearly mentioned that DG in accepted quantity will not be accepted. So the shipper should check the summary in DGL 2.8.3.5 and see which carrier will not accept before they prepare the DG in accepted quantities. Here's a sample of the summary, and shippers should focus in this item when they prepare the DG in accepted quantities. Now it is the time for us to summarize what we have learned. Accepted quantities means a small quantities and they are not permitted in baggage or mail. DG permitted in accepted quantities can refer DGL 2.6.2.2 or the table 4.2. Package limit for accepted quantities can be referred to DGL table 2.6a and 4.2. Packaging requirements for accepted quantities can refer DGL 2.6.5. Necessary marking for the package can refer DGL 2.6.7. Required document for accepted quantities package can be found in DGL 2.6.8. Accepted quantities handling can refer DGL 2.6.9. The minimus quantities can be located in DGL 2.6.10. Finally, don't forget to check operator variation in DGL 2.8.3.5, since not all carriers accept DG in accepted quantities. Thank you for your watching.